technology Goa team. Earlier, he was the team leader of Hybrid System Group in drivetrain innovation, the Netherlands, co-founder of Elmocad, Germany, and development engineer at Thermodic GmbH, Germany. And his expertise includes design of high power and torque density motors for electric vehicle applications, advanced induction motor design and prototyping, vector control of motors for EV drivetrains, smart charger including wireless power transfer. He has one patent to his credit, which is about unipolar coil arrangement method for improving the coupling factor and reducing the electromagnetic emissions in wireless power transfer systems and a coil thereof. And today we have his presence in our midst, covering up the topic architecture design for electric vehicles. On behalf of the Sri Ishwar College of Engineering Management and the Department of Mechanical Engineering, we welcome you and thank you, sir, for accepting the invitation raised on this issue and giving us the acceptance to have the session. And dear participants, you can have a clear-cut idea on this topic assigned. And if you have any queries, you can have the interactive session. And as usual, you can post your queries during the session in the chat box. With this note, I once again welcome the resource person, Dr. Praveen Kumar. And now the session is yours, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for introducing me. However, there is small changes. So I was assistant professor in 2009. Now I am a full professor since many years. And also, yeah, regarding patents, we have 10 now. So the biodata which you read was, I think, 10 years old. But anyway, so I will now share my screen. And please do let me know if you can see it. Is my screen visible to all of you?
No, sir, it's not visible, sir.
Not it. Now it is visible, sir. It's getting, yeah, it is visible.
Okay. So the theme for today's talk is on the EV architecture, and that's what I'll be trying to explain. How do we choose an EV architecture and how do we go into the sizing of the EV architecture? Now, to start with, the entire analysis and the work begins with what we call as drive cycle analysis. Now, some of the drive cycles are shown here on the screen. There are two of them. So on the left, we have a drive cycle, which is called as the DDC. And DDC stands for daily drive cycle. It's an old drive cycle. We have a new one now, but this is available on the open domain. Anyone can download that. So if we see the DDC drive cycle, and it's true for any kind of a drive cycle, you have time versus speed plot, and the time is usually in seconds and the speed is in kilometers per hour. Now, next to DDC, the upper right corner is NEDC, which stands for New European Drive Cycle. And again, here we have the speed and the time in 2x's. Here, this is a fundamental starting point to choose a drivetrain architecture as well as the size of the various subsystems that make the drivetrain. So the subsystems would be, the primary subsystems are the battery pack and the electric motor, which is the prime mover. Now, if you look at these two drive cycles that we have on the screen, the blue curves, we can start to see some immediate differences. For example, if you look at or pay attention to the daily drive cycle, there are 3 durations of time where the speed of the vehicle is less than or about 10 kilometers per hour, fairly long durations in daily drive cycle. Whereas in case of NEDC, we don't have any duration of time where the speed of the vehicle is below 10 kilometers per hour. So that's one stark difference that we see immediately. The other is DDC is very dynamic in nature. You see, there are hardly any durations of time where the speed of the vehicle remains constant. It's continuously changing. Either there is an acceleration or there is a deceleration that keeps happening. And in case of NEDC, there are fairly good durations of time where the speed vehicle is more or less constant. Okay, so that's the second difference that we see between these two drive cycles. Now, the other very critical issue that one can observe from the drive cycle is that there is a heavy acceleration that happens in DDC at around 50 kilometers per hour. So if you pay attention, after 1220 or 30 seconds, the speed of the vehicle increases from 50 kilometers per hour to 60 kilometers per hour in a fairly short duration of time. Okay, so this is an acceleration at high speed. We don't have such a condition in NEDC, and the speed does not go beyond 50 kilometers per hour. Both the drive cycles represent city driving conditions, but very different styles of driving. Now, it is very important to pay attention to this part where we have an acceleration from 50 to 60 kilometers per hour in a short duration of time. The reason is, if we talk about acceleration, then it means the machine has to produce a high torque, because any acceleration would mean you have to overcome the inertia of the system. And to overcome the inertia of the system, you need to have a high value of torque. And a high value of torque at high speed is usually a difficult thing for any prime mover. When I say prime mover, it can be an electric motor, it can be an internal combustion engine. So for any prime mover, a high torque at high speed is usually difficult. You can get higher torque for motors, especially you can get higher torques at lower speeds. Okay, but here the demand, the driving demand puts a condition on the machine that it should be able to deliver a fairly high torque at high speed. Now, if I look at both these two drive cycles and differentiate them with respect to time, so I would be getting acceleration. So below each drive cycle, I have the time versus acceleration profile for DDC as well as for NEDC. Now, if I look at the acceleration profile, we'll just focus on the acceleration. We won't pay attention to the deceleration or the braking. Okay, just the acceleration part. So if you look at the acceleration, then in case of Delhi drive cycle, the acceleration comes close to 1.5 meters per second squared. Whereas in case of NEDC, the acceleration is hardly 1.1 or 1.2 meters per second squared. So higher acceleration means the machine has to produce higher torque. And there are very frequent accelerations in DDC, whereas in case of NEDC, there are not many frequent acceleration durations. Okay, so frequent acceleration is also a tough condition if we look at motor, especially because the machine will tend to heat up, and as it tends to heat up, then it will tend to derate. So that's the trouble. Now, these were the two city drive cycles, and in this slide there are two more city drive cycles. So on the left we have US 06, and on the right we have NYCC, and NYCC stands for New York City Cycle. Now, if you see here, both the drive cycles, they show a very different driving pattern. So US 06 is actually a kind of a driving pattern where it is known as a mixed driving. So you are in the crowded part of the city. So this here, the tail end of the drive cycle represents a crowded part of the city. Then you are on a part of the city where the traffic density is not very high. So you can even observe from the driving pattern, the vehicle moves at more or less fairly a constant speed, and there is no braking, and there is no standstill. Okay, so it's fairly a continuous driving situation. So it's a mixed driving pattern. Whereas NYCC is again a very, very dynamic drive cycle. Okay, it represents the driving condition or the situation in New York City, and it's a pretty dense traffic. As you can see from the drive cycle, there are very frequent changes in the speed. There is no duration of time when the speed of the vehicle remains more or less constant. And now if we take the time derivative of both these two drive cycles, then we would see that here the acceleration in case of US 06 is around 1.5 meters per second squared, very similar to what we have in DDC. And in case of NYCC, you can see the accelerations are very high. They go beyond 2.5 meters per second squared. Okay, so a pretty heavy acceleration is what we can expect if the vehicle drives in New York City. However, there is something very different in NYCC compared to DDC. We do not have high acceleration demands at high speed. The speed of the vehicle doesn't even go beyond 50 kilometers per hour, let alone accelerate at 50 kilometers per hour. So that's a difference that we have between NYCC and DDC. Now, on this slide, we have two more drive cycles. Okay, so one is IM240 and the other one is FTP75. Both again represent the city conditions because we don't have any high speed driving profiles in any of these drive cycles. So high speed usually refers to the highway driving, and highway driving is fairly a very easy condition to handle for any kind of a prime mover, because you will more or less drive at a constant speed. Maybe every now and then you would accelerate. Very occasionally, very occasionally, you might need to brake, but it's more or less a continuous smooth driving. It's the city driving which is a challenging part, and that's why we focus more on the city driving conditions, because the drive cycle has to meet that, and most of the vehicles would be in city conditions for maximum duration of time. So here again, if you see, FTP75 represents a very unique driving behavior, which is seen by delivery vehicles, for example. So if you have a courier service delivery vehicle like DHL or Indian Post or whatever it might be, or even Amazon delivery and so on. So the vehicle would be in the city traffic conditions, would go from one address to the other address, deliver whatever it has to, and then keep driving. Okay. Now, since it's a delivery vehicle, the speeds won't be very high, maybe 35 kilometers per hour every now and then. And also, the accelerations won't be extreme, okay? Because after all, it's a van carrying goods, so it won't really accelerate very much. It's only the personal vehicles which undergo higher acceleration. Goods carrier won't undergo very high accelerations. So that is what is represented by FTP75, a scenario which we can visualize of what kind of a driving does it represent. Similarly, we have IM240. So this again represents what is known as suburban driving. So you're driving in the suburban regions of the city, or slightly outskirt regions of the city where the traffic is not very dense, but still it is within the city limits. So you are not allowed to drive very fast. The speed limits would be around 40 or 50 kilometers per hour. But since the traffic is light, there won't be too many stoppages. Just one standstill duration we have here. More or less the vehicle would be driving continuously, okay? And there won't be any fast or rapid acceleration. The rapid accelerations happen when you are for example, standing at a traffic light, okay? Because then you want to move away from the traffic light as fast as possible, and that's where people tend to accelerate very fast, okay? But otherwise, the accelerations usually are in the range of 0.5 to 0.7 or 0.8 meters per second squared. So that is the situation, okay? So we have seen some drive cycles, and there are two more drive cycles that we have. On the left, we have LA92, which represents the Los Angeles city cycle, driving cycle. And on the right, we have EPAH. So EPAH can be referred to, or we can create a scenario which represents, let's say, rural driving conditions. Okay, so the speeds won't be very high, but the traffic won't be very dense either, and you would be driving without much standstill durations. Whereas contrast this to LA, Los Angeles city, it's a very heavy traffic. There are lots of traffic lights, traffic jams. You have to come to a standstill very frequently, and it is almost impossible to have a continuous speed duration. The speed will keep on changing very dynamically. So it's a very dynamic drive cycle that we have. And if we take the acceleration profile, so again, you see here the acceleration would be around 1.2 or 1.3 meters per second squared for LA drive cycle, whereas Once you are in the rural conditions, then the acceleration won't be very steep. So here in this figure, we have in the presentation so far, we have seen 8 drive cycles, and we have also seen the accelerations, and we could observe some very key features from each of these drive cycles. Now, if I want to make a summary of it, then this is what comes up. So we have all the 8 drive cycles here. The names of them are given in column number 2, and the duration of each drive cycle is given in column number 3. Okay. And here comes the interesting part, the maximum acceleration that each drive cycle has. So in case of DDC, it is around 1.4 meters per second squared. And the other one with maximum acceleration is NYCC with a value of around 2.7 meters per second squared. Okay, but then there's a key difference, as I explained earlier. In case of DDC, this 1.4 meters per second squared happens at 50 kilometers per hour. Okay, the vehicle goes from 50 to 60 with this kind of an acceleration. Whereas in case of NYCC, the speed never went beyond 40 kilometers per hour. And if you see the maximum speeds, so in DDC, the maximum speed was 60 kilometers per hour. And in all other drive cycles, the maximum speed was well below 50 kilometers per hour, or at best 50 kilometers per hour. Okay, so these are some of the key points that we can extract out from the drive cycle. So it gives a snapshot of what are the key features of each of the drive cycles that we have. So now we have the drive cycles, and we have understood some basic aspects and characteristics of the drive cycles. So with this, then we can go to an example of how the drivetrain platform and the drivetrain architecture and the sizing of the drivetrain can be done. So for the sake of example, we have this vehicle in front of us, which is Tata Magic. It can be used to carry passengers. It can be modified to even use goods. So it can be a multi-purpose vehicle. So we have chosen this platform, the vehicle platform. Now, to do the analysis, we need some parameters for this vehicle. And the table here on the screen shows us the critical parameters that define this vehicle. So the first parameter is the mass of the vehicle, the mass of the empty vehicle. It's around 1.6 tons. And then we need the coefficient of rolling resistance. So that represents that how much of frictional force will be created between the tire and the road surface. And for this vehicle, and the type of tire this vehicle uses, and its radius, and the air pressure, and so on. So the coefficient of rolling resistance comes out to be 0.015. It's a dimensionless quantity. Then we would need the gravitational constant. That's same for all the vehicles. And we need that because if we want to calculate the force acting on the vehicle when it goes up a hill or goes up a gradient, like climbing a flyover or something. Okay, so in that case, it would come into picture. And this is the air density at room temperature, which is 1.3 kilogram per meter cube. This is again a standard value which remains constant for all the vehicles. Then we would need aerodynamic drag coefficient of the vehicle. This is again a dimensionless quantity, and it represents how much of resistive force the vehicle would experience from air when it moves at a certain speed. And this factor depends on the shape of the vehicle. Okay, so different shape of the vehicle will give you this number, and also what kind of contours are there on the vehicle, so how the air flows around the vehicle, on top of it, below it, and so on. So all that taken into account gives us the aerodynamic drag coefficient. And then we have the frontal area. Okay, so frontal area of the vehicle is the one which is exposed to the wind maximum, and that's where most of the resistive forces would be felt. So that is around 2.7 meters per second squared for this vehicle. And of course, we would need the radius of the wheel. Okay, so the radius of the wheel would be needed to transform force into torque. So these are the key parameters that we need for the vehicle. So we have the drive cycle, and then we have the vehicle parameters. And using the classical laws of motion, Newtonian mechanics, okay, so we will be able to find out that if a vehicle has to move at a given speed, then how much of force do we need to apply at the wheel. Okay, so let's say a vehicle is moving at 30 kilometers per hour. We take that value from a drive cycle, 30 kilometers per hour, and using these parameters we can find out how much is the friction between the tire and the road surface. Then we will know that whether the vehicle, if the vehicle is going up the gradient, we would know how much is the gravitational pull that the vehicle experiences. Then we would know how much is the aerodynamic drag the vehicle experiences. If an acceleration is happening, then we would know how much of inertial resistance that the vehicle would have. So these are the four resistive forces that the vehicle will experience, and from there we find out what is the force that we need at the wheel. So once we know the force at the wheel and we know the radius of the wheel, we can find out at what speed the wheel rotates in radians per second, and from there we can find out how much torque actually the wheel needs to drive at 30 kilometers per hour on a flyover with a certain grade angle. Okay, so once we know those force values and torque values, then we would eventually find out how much torque should the prime mover produce, and in our case the prime mover would be the electric motor. Now to do that, okay, we see how we can use the drive cycle data and also eventually the vehicle parameters to find out the critical value. So far we have the drive cycle data in this table. All the 8 drive cycles are given in column number 2. In column number 3 we have the maximum torque at the wheel. Okay, because you know what is the maximum speed that the vehicle can go, and what is the radius of the wheel, you know the mass, you know the aerodynamic drag coefficient, you know the rolling coefficient, we know everything. Okay, and just briefly, as I explained you, using classical Newtonian mechanics, we can find out what is the maximum torque that the wheel would need. We can also find out the maximum power that the wheel would need. Torque into speed will give us power, and we will also know the maximum speed of the wheel, because for example in daily drive cycle it was maximum speed was 60 kilometers per hour. So that 60 kilometers per hour is translated to RPM. So the column numbers 3, 4 and 5 give us maximum torque, maximum power and maximum speed at the wheel. Okay, so these are the values that we have at the wheel for each of the drive cycles. Now if you see here, just it's for the same vehicle. Okay, the vehicle is Tata Magic. That vehicle is subjected to different drive cycles, the 8 drive cycles which I showed you, and you see what a drastic difference we start to see. In case of DDC, the maximum power at the wheels is around 30 kilowatt. Whereas in case of NEDC, the maximum power at the wheel is 16 kilowatt. Okay, so you see here, in case of NEDC, we need just about half the power that we would need for DDC. That is the major difference. Okay, now the other difference is the maximum speed of the wheel, of course, is higher for DDC because it goes up to 60 kilometers per hour, and is lower for NEDC because there the speed does not go beyond 50 kilometers per hour. So these are some of the critical differences that we start to see. NYCC needs a higher torque because there the acceleration went up to 2.3, 2.4 meters per second squared. Okay, but the power rating is almost similar to daily drive cycle because the speed was lower in case of NYCC. Okay, so this is all that we have at the wheels. Now if we take a gear train, okay, or a gear ratio of 1:15, which includes the differential and a single gear shift. Okay, so if we take a gear ratio of around 1:15, then the maximum torque at the wheel can be translated to maximum torque that the motor needs to produce. Okay, so in these columns we have the maximum torque that the wheels need to produce, the motor needs to produce for all the 8 drive cycles. So we have for gear ratio of 1:15, and we also have for a gear ratio of 1:13.5. Now we took these two gear ratios because they are most commonly used ones. Fine. We can also translate the speed, wheel speed, using the gear ratio. Okay, so we have the maximum speed, which is given here in last two columns for gear ratio 1:15 and 1:13.5 for each of the 8 drive cycles. Now there is a big difference between the motor and an internal combustion engine. If we were to use an internal combustion engine and the maximum torque demand was 87 Newton meters, then we need to have an engine that produces 87 Newton meters. Okay. However, in case of electric motors, we don't have to have a motor which has a rated torque of 87 Newton meters because motors can be overloaded. Okay. Now, overloading of the motor depends on what kind of cooling are we going to use. So if you have an air cooling, forced air cooling, then maybe it is possible to overload the motor by 30%. That means that if you have a motor with a power rating of 100 kilowatt, you can extract 130 kilowatt, 30% more than the rated value for maybe 15, 20 or 30 seconds. If you have a liquid cool machine, on the other hand, you can overload it by a factor 3 as well. That means if you have a 100 kilowatt motor, you can extract 300 kilowatt for a short duration of time, maybe 15 seconds or 20 seconds. Okay, so motors can be overloaded, and that overloading depends on what kind of cooling we use, because cooling will extract the heat out, and if we have liquid cooling, then heat would be extracted out much faster, and this would not damage the machine at all. Okay, so it's all about heat removal. The faster we can remove the heat, the better overloading we can achieve, and even longer overloading we can achieve. So now, keeping that in mind, for this vehicle platform, we decided to use a liquid cool machine. Okay, so as I said, a liquid cool machine can be overloaded maybe up to a factor 3 without any problem. Okay, now keeping that factor in mind, if the peak torque demand was 87 Newton meter, then we can have a machine with a rated torque of around 29 Newton meter, and that would be just sufficient. Okay, so this is what is meant by the overloading. So from there, from the peak demand, we come to the rated demand for the machine. So we have the rated torque demand for a gear ratio of 1:15 and gear ratio of 1:13.5. And for each of the 8 drivetrains, the values are given. And same would happen for the power as well. So the peak power that the motor needs to produce is around 32 kilowatt, but we don't need to have a motor with a rated power of 32 kilowatt. It can be much lower than that, almost 3 times lower than that, or at least 2.5 times lower than that. So we can use a machine with a 12 kilowatt rating, and that machine will be overloaded and would deliver us 31 kilowatt for a short duration of time. And here then again we have the rated power for all the 8 drive cycles. Now you see the difference. If Tata Magic is to be used in Delhi driving conditions, then we would need a motor with a rated power of 12 kilowatt. But if same Tata Magic is taken and put into European driving conditions, it would need around 6 kilowatt of power, just half the power. So you see what a difference the driving condition can make. So now same vehicle would need twice as large a motor as we would need in European conditions. So you see, when we talk about cost of electric vehicles, size of electric vehicles and so on, it's not just the technology which is important, but the way we drive the vehicle and the traffic sense is also equally important. Okay, if we have a more disciplined driving conditions, if we obey the traffic rules better, and if we are more respectful on the road to fellow travelers, then you can see what a big difference we can bring in. We just need a much smaller motor. We just need half the rating of the motor than we would need. So you see, for the success of EVs on road, it's not just the technology which is critical, it is also the human behavior, the driving behavior, which is also very, very important. Okay. Now, having said that, let's move on. The previous analysis that we did was exclusively for flat road driving conditions. Okay, when you're driving on a flat road and those drive cycles are applied. However, in reality, we won't be driving at flat road. And we have taken a 12 kilowatt machine. The daily driving conditions is what we have taken as a benchmark. So the rating of the machines are given here. The rated powers, the rated torque, the rated speed, as well as the peak power and peak torque. So now we also have to see the power requirements and torque requirements when we go on a grade, when we are climbing a grade. So when we negotiate a grade, there are two conditions that we have to pay attention to. One is negotiating a grade at a constant acceleration, and the second is negotiating a grade at constant speed. And both the conditions can happen. So for example, you are driving on a road, on a flat road, and you were driving at a constant speed, you came across a flyover, so you will maintain that constant speed and then go up. The second condition can come is you were climbing up the flyover, but due to some reason you had to come to a standstill. Maybe there was a traffic jam, and from this standstill condition you will again start to accelerate. Okay, which is a tougher thing to do on a flyover. Okay, so that is what comes under constant acceleration. So there are three typical grades that we have taken: 5 degree, 10 degree, and 17 degrees. And we have taken, for example, for 5 degree, an acceleration of 1 meter per second squared, and another acceleration of 0.5 meters per second squared. So if you are going at 1 meters per second squared, then you can reach a speed of up to 30 kilometers per hour, close to 30 kilometers per hour in 9 seconds. And in that case, the maximum torque that the wheel would need is around 630 Newton meters. Translated to motor, it is around 45 Newton meter. Now 45 Newton meter is larger than the rated value, but it is still less than the peak value. So the vehicle would be able to climb a grade of 5 degree at 1 meters per second square and can reach a speed up to 30 kilometers per hour in less than 10 seconds. Not a problem at all. Now, if we look at another situation, okay, so if we look at a situation which is shown here at 17 degree grade, okay, so if you are going at a 17 degree grade and you want to accelerate at 0.8 meters per second squared continuously, in that case, your wheel would need around 1.2 kilonewton meter of torque, okay, and that would translate to around 90 Newton meter of torque for the motor, okay, and this is higher than the peak value that the motor can do, okay. So at 17 degree grade, you cannot go at 0.8 meters per second squared. Maybe you will have to go at a lower acceleration, and that is around 0.5 meters per second squared. So if you are at 0.5 meters per second squared on a 17 degree grade, then the peak torque that the motor needs to produce is 82 Newton meter, which is less than the peak value of the torque. So this is how we can understand that by doing grading analysis, we would know what are the limits of operation of the vehicle. And this is critical when we do the grade negotiation analysis. And this was at constant acceleration, and similar thing can be done at constant speed as well. So on this slide, we have it. So you are negotiating a grade of 5 degree, 10 degree, or 17 degree at constant speeds. Let's say 27 kilometers per hour, or 34 kilometers per hour, or 20 kilometers per hour. Okay. And you can find out what is the maximum torque that the wheel would need, and that would translate to what is the peak torque that the motor would need to produce. So in all these cases, the motor can provide you the required torque. So you can go on a grade of 17 degrees at a constant speed of 20 kilometers per hour. However, if you go more than that, let's say if you go at 30 kilometers per hour, or if you want to maintain a constant speed of 30 kilometers per hour at 17-degree grade, then the peak torque that the motor would need to produce will be much more than 87 Newton meter. So it is not doable. So 20 kilometers per hour, or at best 25 kilometers per hour, is the safe limit or the allowable limit that the motor can sustain. Okay, so this comes from the grade analysis, that at what constant speed on a given grade angle can you move with this kind of a motor configuration that we have. So this was all about the grade analysis which we usually do. Then comes the next critical point, which is about the battery specification. Excuse me. So we would also like to find out the rating of the battery, because that's where the entire electrical energy is stored. So here on this slide, for each of the 8 drive cycles that we have taken earlier, we try to find out the battery ratings. Okay, so you see here, between the battery and the wheel, there are various subsystems that we would have. Okay, so we have the differential gear. We have taken an average efficiency of around 95% for that. Then you have a single reduction gear, again an average efficiency of around 95%. Then we have a motor, which would have an average efficiency of around 80%. Then you have an inverter, DC to 3-phase AC inverter with an average efficiency of 90%. And then again a DC to DC converter, which would again have an average efficiency of around 90%. And then you have the battery, which has its own efficiency, which is around 95% discharge efficiency. Okay, everything taken together, the complete efficiency of the drivetrain, the average value will be around 60%, 59% to be more precise. Okay, and we do not consider regeneration for the time being, 0% regeneration. So if we look at each of the drive cycle, for example, Delhi drive cycle, so in that case, the total distance traveled or total distance represented by Delhi drive cycle is 7.8 kilometers. The average speed is around 18 kilometers per hour. The maximum speed is 60 kilometers per hour. With a total gear ratio of 1:15, we have a motor with a continuous or rated power of 12 kilowatt. The peak power of the motor is 32 kilowatt, and all these numbers, they translate to that the vehicle would be needing around 181 watt hour per kilometer. So this would be the energy consumption of the battery pack per kilometer. I think somebody's microphone
Ma'am,
is
சொல்லுங்க.
unmuted. So please,
கையில தான் ma'am வச்சிருந்தேன்.
I request you to please mute your microphone.
Yes, sir. It's muted, sir. You can
Okay.
continue, sir. Please.
Thank you. So for Tata Magic in Delhi driving condition, we would be consuming around 181 watt hour per kilometer. Okay, and in European condition, same vehicle would be consuming around 77 watt hour per kilometer. Now, if I want to have an autonomy of 170 kilometers, that means on a single charge, the vehicle should drive 170 kilometers. So in that case, for daily driving condition, we would need a battery pack of 30 kilowatt hour. And in European driving conditions, we would need a battery pack of 13 kilowatt hour. Now you see the difference. We need a battery pack which is almost 2.5 times as big as in the European conditions for Delhi driving condition. Now here comes the other challenge. We need a bigger motor, which we already saw. We need a much bigger battery pack. And all that happens because of very, very poor and inefficient driving styles that we have. And a bigger battery pack means more money. Around 40% of the vehicle cost is battery pack. So if you can reduce the size of the battery pack, then you bring down the cost of the vehicle. And that's where the big challenge is in India for EV adoption. Because of our bad driving conditions and because of our poor infrastructure, we need a much larger powertrain and we need a much larger battery pack at a much cheaper cost, which is almost an impossible condition to meet. So we want that we will, as a society, we will have a bad behavior, but we will also not pay more as a penalty for our bad behavior, which is from the engineering point of view is impossible. Okay, no other dry cycle needs such a huge battery pack as we need. No other dry cycle represents as inefficient driving condition as ours. Okay, and the Europeans and the Americans would be willing to pay good money for their electric vehicles, and we won't be willing to pay a higher cost for the vehicle we have. So either we have bad behavior, we are willing to pay more, it's fine, but it's a very bad situation we have in our country. We will behave bad and we want to pay less. And from the numbers we see, it is an impossible condition to achieve. However, if we take some amount of regeneration, then this 30 kilowatt hour can be brought down to 21 kilowatt hour, because you can recover some energy from regenerative braking. So we won't need a 30 kilowatt hour battery pack, but a 21 kilowatt hour battery pack might suffice our requirement. Okay. And then comes this point, which is the torque versus speed characteristics for the motor. So you see, we had the 8 drive cycles. For each drive cycle, we had the speed versus time data. We also had the vehicle parameters. Now, using the equation of motion for the vehicle, which is a very standard thing, we can calculate that at each point of a drive cycle, what is the torque required, taking into account the gear ratio. So let's say at time t1, the vehicle was moving at 30 kilometers per hour. We find out the torque at the wheel, and then eventually we find out what torque should the motor be producing. Then at time t2, we do the same process. So if we do that process for all the 8 drive cycles, then you get all these bubble plots, which are the scatter plots. They represent the torque versus speed values for all the 8 drive cycles. Now, we had chosen our machine which had a rated torque of around 30 Newton meter and a peak torque of around 90 Newton meter for a gear ratio of 1:15. Okay, the maximum speed, if you remember from the previous slides, the maximum speed of the motor was 12,000 RPM. The rated speed was 4,000 RPM. So rated speed 4,000 RPM means the machine should be able to produce rated torque up to rated speed. So you see here, it should produce 30 Newton meter of torque up to 4,000 RPM. Then we had the peak performance. So in the peak condition, the machine produced 90 Newton meter of torque. Okay, and this maximum speed was still 12,000 RPM, and the power produced was 32 kilowatt in the peak condition. So 90 Newton meter is the peak torque, 30 kilowatt is the peak power. So if you know the torque and you know this the power, you can find out the speed. Okay, the base speed at peak condition. So it would mean that the machine need to produce 90 Newton meter continuously up to this point, which is around 3,700 RPM. So the brown curve represents the rated torque versus speed condition, and the black curve represents the peak torque versus speed condition. Okay, and if you see all the operating points, let's focus on the positive torque values. Okay, so if you see all the positive torque values, majority of the operating points are below the brown curve. There is a cluster of operating points, okay, which is around the brown curve. So that means most of the time the machine or the motor that we have taken now from the calculation will be operating near the rated values. Okay, sometimes it would go beyond the rated value. So you can see there are some points which are between the black curve and the brown curve. So that means these are the durations where the motor is overloaded, but there is no point which is beyond the black curve, which is a good thing. That means if we if we design a motor with this kind of a characteristics, then it can meet all the driving conditions that we want to have. There will be no driving condition which will be missed out by this motor. So if you use this motor, it will work in New York, it will work in Europe, it will work in Delhi, it will work anywhere. Okay. Maybe for a European condition, this motor is oversized because most of the operating points, if you see here, they would be lying in this region, much below the rated value. Okay. But fine, the machine would sufficiently work. So this was the desired torque versus speed characteristics for a gear ratio of 1:15. If we take a gear ratio of 1:13.5, of course, the machine will have to produce more torque because the gear reduction is smaller. So the motor has to produce more torque. So in this case, the motor will have to produce around 92 or 93 Newton meter of torque, the peak values. Similarly, the rated values will be higher. Okay. And the maximum speed will also be lower now. Instead of 12,000, we have 11,000 RPM. Instead of a base speed of 4,000, we have a lower base speed. So this is how the distribution of torque versus speed characteristics change for the machine depending on the gear ratio. Now, if we summarize all this, okay, then we get a specification sheet which is shown here on the screen. So for our vehicle, we can use any kind of a three-phase machine. It can be an induction machine, a permanent magnet machine, or a synchronous reluctance machine. Okay. If we use a gear ratio of 1:15, we need a machine with a power rating of 12 kilowatt and around 29 Newton meter of continuous torque. If we use a gear ratio of 1:13.5, the power rating won't change, but it's the torque rating. It would be 31 Newton meter continuous torque. Similarly, the peak values are given here. We need a battery pack of around 21 kilowatt hour, which I already explained you. And we would go for a 200 volt battery pack, and the current rating would be 105 ampere hour. So that would give us 21 kilowatt hour. And we did the grading analysis as well. So the grade analysis showed that the acceleration at 5-degree grade would be from 0 to 30 kilometers per hour in less than 10 seconds. Okay. Acceleration at 10-degree grade would be such that you can go from 0 to 30 kilometers per hour in less than 17 seconds. It will take longer because you can't accelerate faster on a 10-degree grade. And the load carrying capacity of the vehicle would be 8 passengers plus 1 driver. And the expected range of the vehicle would be 170 kilowatt. So far in this discussion, we started with the drive cycle, and then we did the analysis step by step. Then we took a vehicle platform, and then we did the analysis further to find out what would be the specification of the drivetrain. And what we have here on the screen is the specification sheet. Now would come the task of designing these motors to meet these specifications. Okay, so how can we design the motor? How will we choose the number of poles? How would we choose the number of slots? Which machine would we prefer, an induction machine or a permanent magnet machine, or maybe a synchronous reluctance machine? Okay, so all those decisions will start to come, and then the detailed design of the machine would start to progress. Okay, and this was the actual electric version of Tata Magic, a smaller vehicle which was eventually made by Tata Motors as a demonstrator. Okay, so it was a much smaller vehicle. The mass was 1.3 ton instead of 1.6. The passenger carrying capacity was 3 plus driver. So it was a demonstrator vehicle that they chose. Okay, of course, then the motor rating, the rated power was also lower. They went for an 8 kilowatt motor. Our vehicle was a much bigger one with a larger load carrying capacity. In this case, they used a gear ratio of 13.5, and in our analysis, we took both the gear ratios, 1:15 and 1:13.5 as well. So this was the reality which was eventually made. And now I will just try to show you some of the architectures of the drivetrain that would be feasible. So we divide the drivetrain into various blocks. So here on the left hand side, you see a drivetrain with a three-phase AC motor and a fixed gear feeding to the driven axle. Okay, and here you have the same configuration but with a gearbox. So if you have a gearbox, then you need a clutch. This arrow is at a wrong position. It should be here with the clutch. So we definitely need a clutch if you want to have multiple gears instead of a fixed gear. So these are the two possibilities that we can have. Then there can be a third possibility where you can have a machine, okay, with a much larger capacity and feeding the driven axle directly without a gearbox. The fourth configuration can be that you have individual motor and a fixed gear for each wheel. Okay, so this is also known as now e-axle. So we are coming close to a very good electric vehicle configuration with minimum mechanical parts. So no gears. Gears are completely eliminated. Then we can also have a configuration where the motor has a very high torque rating, so you don't even need a fixed gear, and each motor drives an independent wheel. We can also have a configuration where the wheel itself is the motor. So this is an outer rotor configuration. Okay, so in this case, the part of the wheel on which the tire is mounted is actually the rotor. So these are known as in-wheel rotors or motors or hub motors. Hub motors are specially used for small vehicles like two-wheelers. People are trying them for bigger vehicles like cars and buses even. Okay, so if we reach this kind of a configuration, then this is a 100% electric architecture. And you can have one wheel which is non-powered. Okay, so this is how the arrangement of the motors can happen within the driven portions of the axle. Then based on the batteries, we can have multiple configurations. So here HSE represents high specific energy source, which is something like a motor or also something like a battery or a fuel cell. So that is an HSE. It feeds energy to the bidirectional power electronic converter, which goes into the motor. You can also have a combination of sources, so HSE like a battery and HSP, which is the high specific power source, which is our supercapacitor. So you can have these two feeding the motor. Okay, and then if you have two motor configuration, then you can have one motor fed by HSE and then you can have another motor which is fed by HSP. So that is also possible. So this is the configuration that we can have based on how the sources are placed. We can also have a configuration where all four wheels are driven by independent motor and each of the motor has its own energy source. It can be an HSP source or an HSE source. This is a pure electrical architecture. So each wheel is not just a wheel, but it's a motor plus converter plus battery, everything integrated together. Okay, so we can even think of such kind of an architecture. These architectures are at present in developmental stage. We don't have any commercial applications as of now because it's a very difficult thing to achieve, and the control is a very major challenge because you have to control four independent motors, four independent power electronic converters, and four independent energy sources. But if this can be done effectively, then it is a very, very modular architecture. So maybe the wheels of the future will not just be a tire and rim and so on. It would be all this also included, which is a very likely scenario that we can see maybe 15 or 20 years down the line. And the configuration that we took for our analysis for the Tata Magic is this here. So we took a high specific energy source, which was a battery pack. Then we had a DC-DC converter. Then we had a voltage source inverter feeding the motor. We had a fixed gear and then a differential and then the driven wheel. So that was the configuration that was chosen for the sake of analysis that we had for our example. So I think that this was the last point which I wanted to discuss. So now we can open up the floor for discussion and Q&A. And if there are questions, then please do ask.
So the participants, the session is open to you. Sir, actually, participants have raised the questions.
Yes.
So one participant named Uttarkash Verma.
Hmm.
Sir, for more power of the vehicle and more range,
Hmm.
TNE battery needs to be bigger, but this increases significantly. Like Nexon has a battery pack of 200 kg. So what can we do? Get good range, but not compressing on weight.
We should learn to drive properly. That's the first thing we should do. Good driving behavior will save us a lot of weight, a lot of money, will increase our efficiency, will be good for the environment, will be good for everybody. Apart from that, I don't see any other chance, because if you accelerate too rapidly, if you brake too frequently, and if everyone wants to overtake everybody, then I think we have to pay. There's no other option. I don't see any engineering solution to that.
Thank you, sir. So another question from Ms. Kausalya. Kindly say us the importance and possibilities of wireless charging of batteries in e-vehicle.
Yeah, wireless charging is a very viable solution. People are working towards developing wireless solutions, and wireless solutions will become even more important when we have autonomous vehicles. So you can imagine, once the battery runs out of energy, it would go back to the docking station and start charging. So there we can't expect a human being waiting for the battery to be connected and so on. So it has to be all automated process. So wireless charging would definitely be a viable solution, and it would be a critical solution and a necessary solution for autonomous vehicles.
Good morning,
What is
sir. This is Ramakrishnan.
Yes.
I have one question.
Yes.
How to choose a battery SOC maximum and minimum limits while we are going to designing battery management system
Oh, that's
strategy?
standard for most of the lithium chemistries. It is between 90% and 10%. You should not between this range of SOCs you should operate the battery.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank
Sir,
you,
one
sir.
more question. Okay, what are the appropriate battery and drivetrain we need to choose, or references that we can use for an electric buses or truck?
You see, electric buses are using lithium ion chemistries, and the motors are, there's an option between a permanent magnet motor or an induction motor. Both are viable solutions. People are using both of them.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. So another question from Mr. Ravi Babu. Sir, what is the difference between HSP and HSE source, sir?
HSE is high specific energy. That means you can't discharge them very fast. They can't give you a large power. They can give you a moderate power for a long duration of time, and they can store huge amount of energy. HSP is the high specific power source, like supercapacitors. They don't store large amount of energy, okay, but they can deliver a huge amount of power for a short duration of time. So that is the major difference.
Thank you, sir. Sir, next question from Dr. Ganesh Kumar, sir. So, sir, what is the advantage of individual wheel drive rather than one motor?
Individual is, you see, first of all, it will build in redundancy. For example, if you have just one motor and if for some reason that motor has a fault, your entire vehicle comes to a standstill. If you have multiple motors, then your limb through capability would be intact. So you can still drive the vehicle and reach the service station. That's point number one. Point number two is that you are removing all kinds of mechanical connections. Okay, so it's coming to a pure electric configuration.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, another question, sir. Sir, can we achieve more efficiency if we use gearbox? This is question raised from Dr. Ganesh Kumar, sir, again.
In some sense, yeah, because if you use a gearbox, then you will be using a high-speed motor, and high-speed low-torque motor is usually more efficient than low-speed high-torque motor. So you will gain in efficiency.
Sir, another question is from Mr. Uttarkash Verma. Sir, since IC engines is replaced with battery, so vibrations are reduced. So are EV having lighter vehicle body?
EV without the battery is lighter, but the battery is extremely heavy right now because the energy density of battery is nowhere close to petrol or diesel. So the amount of energy that you have in 50 liters of petrol would result in a battery pack which would weigh around 200, 250 kilograms. So from that point of view, the vehicle won't be lighter.
Sir, thank you, sir. Sir, another question from Ms. Nancy. So how to reduce the thermal loss in wireless charging? Also, can we achieve high density power in wireless charging?
Yeah, we can achieve high power density in wireless charging, and to reduce the thermal losses, we need to pay a lot of attention to cooling. And if you have a very high powered wireless charger, then we will have to go for liquid cooling of the system. And we have to cool the conductors by passing the coolant through the conductor.
Sir, thank you, sir. Sir, personally, I am having a question, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Sir, many countries have plans to deploy electrical vehicle charging stations.
Yes.
As researchers, how do we start with that? What about the expected issues that will occur in the power system and ways to solve them, sir?
So the first thing is that we will need to pay a lot of attention to harmonic pollution. Okay, because all the charging will happen via inverters and converters. So these are all power electronic equipments. Excuse me. So
Yes, sir.
any kind of switching will result in a lot of harmonic pollution. So that's one key issue that we will have to address. The second key issue that we will have to see is about coordinated charging, because any kind of uncoordinated charging will result in grid imbalance. So we can't allow that to happen. So coordinated charging and harmonic mitigation are the two issues that we will have to pay attention to for Indian scenario at least.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, another question from Sadhanath Malik. So, how much percentage the battery has the weight of electrical vehicle? Is there any kind of percentage ratio, sir?
No, I couldn't understand the question.
So, how much percentage the battery has the weight of the electric vehicle? So, what is the percentage of battery weight? Is there any relative percentage?
It depends on how much range you need. So usually it will be anywhere between 15 to 20, 25% of the vehicle weight.
Yes. So next question from again Uttarkash Verma. Sir, similar to battery powered vehicle, can we see rise in popularity and development of technology of fuel cell vehicles? So they are also more environment friendly compared to EV.
No, fuel cells are not more environment friendly because if you see the way hydrogen is produced, it's from fossil fuel. So we don't have renewable sources right now that are commercially viable to give us hydrogen. So from that point of view, they are not very environment friendly. But yes, fuel cell as a technology is a viable solution. The bottleneck is how efficiently and how sustainably do we produce hydrogen.
Yes, sir. So another question from my side.
Hmm.
Sir, in the transportation sector, that is in electrical vehicles, lithium-ion batteries, particularly LFP and NMC, are the most utilized battery packs today.
Hmm.
So, what are the other expected options with the lithium-ion, or other options could be possibly used in the future?
In future, I think sodium-based batteries might become very popular and sodium availability won't be a large issue. So people are working on sodium ion batteries, and maybe in another decade we would start to see viable solutions of sodium based batteries, maybe even earlier. So that's a chemical and chemistry problem which is being addressed by most of the major research labs around the world to develop reliable battery packs using sodium.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. So, participants, if having any questions, the session is open for interactive. You can please unmute your mic and you can ask to Sir Praveen Kumar sir. Sir, another question from Uttarkash Verma again. So, sir, when coming in future, can we expect a study related to EV to get incorporated in university syllabus?
Yeah, and in our IIT we have a complete master's program in e-mobility. So it is happening. It will
Yes, sir.
happen more and more.
Yes, sir. So, sir, another question is from my side. So, what about this, sir? The cost of vehicles and the lack of supercharging stations are some of the obstacles, right? So, need to overcome before making it a potential solution.
That is true. So we need to have viable products for India, first of all, the vehicles that would be suitable for Indian market. The second is we have to pay attention to charging infrastructure. The third is we need to develop our technology domestically because most of the EV technology is imported right now. So that is again not sustainable. So we need to address all the three fronts: good products, better charging infrastructure, and indigenization of the technology.
Yes, sir. So, thank you. Sir, another question from participants.
Mhm.
Sir, what this is, I have seen it in multiple research articles that authors use certain approaches to predict electrical vehicles' battery state of charge
Hmm.
and then why they compare it with batteries to SOC.
Hmm.
So I want to know how can I get this true SOC curve? Is that obtained using OCV method or column counting method or any other
No,
technique?
Coulomb counting is a very rudimentary method, and that's also one of the most widely used in commercial applications. If you want to find out the true SOC, then I think it is very, very challenging and a very detailed experimental procedure. And I think no one even truly knows what is the true SOC of a given battery. We can only make a very good guess from indirect measurements. So apart from that, I think Coulomb counting, since it's the easiest one, it is being used, but it's by no means the most accurate one.
Yes, sir.
That's what I can say right now.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, another question from it's as per the Indian scenario. One participant is asking. So let's say if you're having a breakdown in an electrical car, so
Hmm.
one cannot just call a normal mechanic like for a normal vehicle.
Yes.
So what is the solution for this kind of problem?
Skill development. There's
Still
no
for
other solution. One
yes,
has to upgrade the skills of people.
yes, sir. Sir, is another question from our participant? Is our country is facing challenge in lithium battery manufacturing, sir?
Yes, our country definitely is facing a big challenge. We don't manufacture any cells. We just make battery packs from the imported cells. That's a big bottleneck that we have. We
Thank
need
you,
to
sir.
address that very fast.
Yes, sir. So another question from Mr. Uttarkash Sharma. Sir, what can be the popular reasons in the rise of popularity of EVs in recent years, and how much can we credit the success of Tesla for it?
You see, Tesla showed that it's possible to make a viable product, but then that's not a mass product. That's a vehicle targeted to a very different segment of the population. So, but they showed that it's possible to make a good EV. Apart from that, I think in India, well, it's not very popular EVs so far. In Europe, the major rise for the popularity is environmental consciousness, and same is true for Japan. That's for sure. And for China, it's a policy that they have made because they wanted to be world leaders in this technology, and that's why the government pushed many policies which resulted in large-scale EV penetration. So different countries had different reasons.
Yes, sir. So the next question from the participant. So the conversion of IC engine cars to electrical vehicle is not popularized. So what is the reason behind, sir?
See, we have to keep in mind that the internal combustion engine vehicle chassis was designed for that. Now, trying to retrofit with an electric drivetrain is not really a very brilliant idea because battery is a concentrated mass, and that chassis was not designed to have such a mass placed anywhere in the vehicle. So the good approach is always that you start with a new chassis design for an electric vehicle rather than trying to retrofit it, because weight distribution and so on won't be very good if you try to retrofit.
Thank you, sir. Sir, another question from Mr. Tenmodi Ganesan. Sir, any research related to metal air battery is being done in our IIT or any kind of research institute
Yes,
as applied to EV?
they are being done in some IITs and also in CSIR labs. It's being done. Definitely, it's being done.
Yes, sir. Sir, another question from a participant. Charging time is a big drawback in electrical vehicles as most of Indian consumers are impatient and would not like to wait for long to charge their vehicles. Although there is fast charging available on most of them, it usually takes an hour to charge about 80% of vehicle, which is indeed a long wait. Is any research is ongoing to overcome this problem without affecting efficiency of battery?
Yeah, one option is swap. Just swap the battery, remove the used battery, put a new one, and then you drive. That will take 10 minutes or so. And there are new lithium chemistries that are available which can undergo very fast charging. So you can charge the battery in 20 minutes or so, but then they are terribly expensive. So these are the two solutions that we have right now.
Sir, one last question from our participant. So the battery pack used for an electric vehicle consists of several series of connected batteries. Is there any need to monitor the charge status of each battery?
We can monitor the charge status of each battery, but then there would each cell, but then there would be hundreds of cells, and that would make monitoring very, very expensive. Very, very expensive.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So
participants, we came for end of the session. So yes, another participants is posting questions. So I think shall we go for another question, sir?
we can take one more question.
Yes, sir. Sir, again the questions from Mrs. Uttarkash Verma. Sir, what norms are there for battery discarding? Tesla has claimed that all its battery packs are recyclable.
Yeah, all the battery packs are recyclable. That's a proven technology. But in India, so far we don't have any standards for recycling of lithium batteries or EV batteries. We don't have many of them. So I think in due course of time, the norms and the standards would come up.
Yes, sir. So I just thank you so much for patiently answering all the questions from the participants. So thank you, sir. So at this juncture, I just thank our session, second session resource person, Dr. Praveen Kumar, sir, for accepting our invitation and sparing his time to give you a wonderful lecture on architecture design for EV. Sir, we are very privileged and very honored to have you in the session, sir.
Yeah. So I hope this session was useful. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again, sir, for joining us in this FTP. So we will definitely meet in some upcoming meetings, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Excellent presentations. Fantastic answer for all the questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. So
thank you, sir.
So information to participants. So participants, the feedback form for session 2 is posted in chat box. So kindly fill your feedback form, which is posted in chat box. So once again, I just thank all participants to join on the day 1 session, forenoon session. So dear participants, with this we are winding up the forenoon session and requesting all